Horizon gents, welcome to GBX, and this is the one way Trump's tariffs might make sense. By John TLDR News Global. Yeah, Trump's tariffs have been like a really intense thing, let's just say. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad for the America in the future? Who knows? Is it going to be bad for every single other country? I know for that for fact. Because economies are crashing around the world. Asian economy has been crashing in past day or two. Indian economy is also crashing, but not as strong as the other, but it's being felt, let's just say. So yeah, it was all in the news. I also do share market here and there, not serious, but yeah. So even I saw like, oh wait a minute, like every stock is crashing. So it's going to be interesting to see what is Trump's plan, because in the end of the day, global economy is like dependent on each other, right? US is at the center of that because that's how dollar is. Wall Street and everything, that is what USA is. So what Trump does gonna affect every single country in the world. So what is his plan? What is he actually trying to do? It's gonna be interesting to see, because this is the only video I come across who talks about like this, who's not completely right wing, who talks like this, like there is a one way Trump's tariff makes sense. Because everybody else is like, oh, this is stupid. Why would you do this? It's just gonna ruin everything. That is usually the feel of things. This is the only video I've seen that's talking actually like this. So let's watch it.
This video is brought to you by Incogni. On Wednesday, US President Donald Trump announced a wave of massive tariffs as part of what he called Liberation Day, wreaking havoc across the global economy. Trump's objectives with these tariffs isn't entirely clear. In his speech, he gave a number of motivations, including rejuvenating American manufacturing, reducing America's trade deficit, and paying off the national debt. But none of these really feel satisfactory, not least because the main consequence of the tariffs seemed to be a recession. This is why some commentators have instead suggested this could all be actually part of a bigger, deeper plan to negotiate both a devaluation of the dollar and an unprecedented restructuring of America's massive debt pile.
Yeah, look man, there's two elements to this is what I'm thinking. Maybe Trump is doing this because ultimately in the end of the day, he wants certain type of deals from countries where he has USA has higher profit margin. So USA makes more money because Trump realized like USA is in a unique position where they have monopoly on a lot of things, and maybe like you can squeeze more money out of it, something like that. Or Trump is thinking like very linearly, which is kind of fucked up if that's the case, because some economists said like you just giving tariffs to every country like that is like expecting a supplier to also be a buyer. That's not how things work, right? Trump says like, okay, we are buying certain things from certain countries, but those countries are not buying similar things from us. That's how economy works. But you can't apply that to every single country. Dynamics are different, right? So you can't just slap tariffs on, because certain countries make sense if they're manufacturing. Certain countries make sense if you're like similar trades. It's like very complex things. You can see every country in a similar way because it's like different structure, different economies, right? But I think it's the first thing I said. Like he wants better deal in the future. So this is kind of like a shaking of things. But the fucked up thing about it is like economy is so delicate. This might create chain reaction that we might feel for decades if recession and like economies collapse. That's the problem.
Might sound somewhat far-fetched, but this is exactly what Stephen Moran, the chair of Trump's Council of Economic Advisors, argued Trump should do in a recent paper titled A User's Guide to Restructuring the Global Trading System. So in this video, we're going to look at Moran's ambitious plan, often nicknamed the Mar-a-Lago Accord, and whether it could actually happen. Who's more influential, Trump or Putin? Well, we asked the TLDR team and audience to rank a bunch of powerful people, and we have the results. Find out the full list in the next copy of our magazine, Too Long. Pre-order a copy by clicking the link in the description. To understand Moran's plan, you need to understand the severity of America's debt crisis. America's national debt to GDP ratio now stands at 123%, and in 2024 the US ran a deficit representing 6.4% of GDP, the largest in the OECD apart from Italy.
Okay, I'm gonna admit to one thing, that the core of things, like there is something there. US's deficit is like constantly increasing, and there is an element of like jobs are going overseas. USA doesn't make much of things. I mean, USA makes things. It's a big ass country, biggest economy in the world, but not the way they should. Things are going overseas a lot, right? Because that's how capitalism works. Every organization thinks for themselves, and there is cheaper labor overseas and things like that, basically. And this is kind of like a dangerous thing for a biggest economy in the world, because deficit is gonna rise, debt gonna rise as well. Debt is the problem. Deficit is like maybe you can like do certain economy mumbo jumbo here and there, but debt is a problem. This is like something is like a slippery slope. It's not gonna stop until somebody does drastic things. Maybe this is the drastic thing that they need. Who knows?
Israel, and more than triple the 2% average for other advanced economies. This has all pushed the US dangerously close to what's known as a debt spiral, as it becomes more expensive to pay off the interest or service this debt pile, which means more debt, which means higher servicing costs, etc. Things look like they're going to get worse in the near term. The current Republican House budget would expand the deficit even further, and the latest Treasury Department report suggests the US has borrowed more money in the past 5 months than ever before. This problem will become more acute if Trump tries to devalue the dollar. This is something Moran called for in that paper, where he tentatively suggested that fixing America's trade deficit could require as much as a 15% dollar devaluation. And in July, Trump himself told Bloomberg,
Wait a minute, way too many currency, if not all currencies in the world, relies on dollar. So would devaluating dollar work like that if every other currency devalues with it? I don't know.
the dollar's strength is, quote, a big currency problem. For context, Trump and his advisors think that the dollar's strength is responsible for America's apparent deindustrialization, because the strength of the dollar makes American exports less competitive in...
Yeah, I mean, that's why a lot of countries' currency is like really low compared to like... India has like, what is it, like 80 rupees per dollar? One of the reasons why like people put plants, like Americans put plants in India, is relatively cheaper. What is your strength of the currency matters when you want to do like labors and jobs and shit like that. If it's like really high, yeah, it's going to be a problem.
Nationally, and allows Americans to import more foreign-made goods. A devaluation would exacerbate the debt problem in two ways. First, it would trigger a sell-off in US government bonds known as treasuries, because they would be paying less interest in real terms. And second, it could erode the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency. Currently, the US dollar is the currency that central banks and other big financial institutions like to hold in their foreign exchange reserves, in large part because it's considered particularly safe, and there's an assumption that the dollar's value will remain relatively stable over time. Similarly, treasuries are now the world's reserve debt instrument, which creates lots of extra demand for treasuries and allows the US to borrow more. However, a rapid devaluation would undermine the dollar's standing, and if the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, treasuries would probably also lose their status as the world's reserve debt instrument. Moran's solution to this conundrum is a multilateral currency agreement, where America's major trading partners agree to do certain things to strengthen their currencies, thus effectively devaluing the dollar. Moran has apparently been inspired by the Plaza Accord of 1985, where then-President Ronald Reagan convinced America's big trading partners, most notably Europe and Japan, to strengthen their currencies and boost demand for American goods. The Plaza Accord was named after the hotel where it was negotiated, hence why this prospective deal has been nicknamed the...
Wait a minute, you can get something out of nothing. If Europeans strengthen their currency, doesn't that hurt them compared to Americans? Like, wouldn't that be like doing a favor to America in a way? And how the things are recently going, like, I don't think people have, European leaders have confidence in Trump that much. All the decisions Trump's making. So would that even work? I don't know.
Largo Accord. To avoid a debt crisis, however, Moran suggests not only that America's allies continue to hold and buy treasuries, but that they accept a so-called rescheduling of the treasuries they currently hold. Basically, all treasuries have a so-called maturity, which is when they pay out their face value. If you buy a 10-year treasury with a face value of $1,000, for instance, you get a bit of interest every 6 months for 10 years, and then at the end of 10 years you get the full $1,000. At the moment, the average weighted maturity of US Treasury debt is about 6 years. Moran's plan here is to basically say to America's trading partners that they're not actually going to pay out the face value. Rather, they're going to reschedule the maturity for some later date. In his paper, Moran suggests using century bonds, i.e. treasuries that only pay out after 100 years, or even so-called perpetual bonds, which don't even have a set maturity date. This would obviously massively ease America's debt burden, but it's a pretty terrible deal for America's big trading partners. So how does Moran plan to get them to agree to
That's what I was saying. Like, you can get something out of nothing. If they do that, they're screwing themselves. Like, they need some incentive. What incentive are you going to give?
all this? Well, he argues that America's trading partners essentially owe it to the US for providing a security umbrella. But if they're not...
You owe me, I don't think that would work at this level. Like, sure, you can do it, but I don't know. After Trump saying to Ukraine, go away, I don't think Europe really going to say, oh, yes, the USA is providing security, so we are going to do it. I don't think Europe's going to rely on that. There's a reason why Europe is spending a lot in military now.
Persuaded by this watertight argument, Moran gives 3 ways the US could convince them. 1, the stick of tariffs, 2, the carrot of the defense umbrella and the risk of losing it, and 3, central bank tools. And this is why some people think Trump could be trying to negotiate a so-called Mar-a-Lago Accord. He's whacking tariffs on all America's big trading partners, and threatening to draw down America's military presence in NATO and elsewhere, exactly as Moran suggests. Similarly, senior members of Trump's team have echoed Moran's ideas. Last year, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, for instance, argued that the US should force NATO states that weren't spending enough on defense to buy what he called 50-year military bonds from the US. So, will this actually work? Well, we're not convinced. For starters, the Plaza Accord was made doable by the fact that, back then, America's main trading partners were also its allies. This is no longer true. America's biggest trading partner, and one of the biggest international treasury holders, is China, and it's hard to see Xi signing up to this. To be honest, given the current state of US-EU relations, it's hard to see even the Europeans signing up, as the offer of an American security umbrella isn't quite as tempting as it used to be, now that Trump has proved so willing to withdraw it. But even if Trump does negotiate a rescheduling of these countries' treasury holdings, it's not clear that this would be enough. After all, 75% of all treasuries are held domestically, and these would still be affected by a sharp devaluation. All in all, while there's clearly an intellectual infrastructure around Trump, it does look like the White House's trade policy is currently being decided by Trump on a whim, and the idea that this is actually 4D chess to reorder the global trade system feels somewhat implausible. Now, as we've demonstrated in this video, there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the world of politics and current affairs, often with few easy solutions. Unfortunately, this can be the case online too. There are all kinds of bad actors out there.
Yeah, but go to original video page link and from there support this channel. The problem with this is, like, is Trump just like doing things as a spur of the moment, like how he runs his company, or does he have a larger plan? I don't think he has a larger plan, unfortunately. He's trying to run this country as how you run a company, right? The problem with that is that's not how countries work. You can run a company the way you run a company, but when it comes to a country, it's not clear cut like that. So Trump's mentality is like, okay, why are we not giving like tariffs? Why are we not slapping tariffs back if these countries are slapping tariff on us? That's his mentality, right? If a country puts 50% tariff on us, we should give at least 30% tariff as a, you know, like reverse thing. The problem with that is the way economies are like, set up. US has monopoly in a lot of things. The USA doesn't have resources or manpower to have a $40 trillion economy, but they do. They have $40 trillion economy because they have monopolies around the world, right? So in response and evening things out, the countries, other countries from which USA benefits, they put tariffs on so things becomes even and they don't get screwed. Trump doesn't realize this, and he's just like slapping tariff like, oh, they're putting tariff on us. Why are we not doing that? Because your economy is very complex. USA should not have $40 trillion economy. They rely on other countries to have that $40 trillion economy, right? And this is the way to even things out a bit, right? So if you go this route, if you just like, oh, if you're going to put tariff on me, I'm going to put tariff on you, your economy is going to crash and other people's economy is going to crash because everybody's dependent on each other. This is like a guy drowning himself and everybody else because it's the same boat. That's the problem. I don't know. We'll see how this turns out. I don't have high hope, right? Even if you're like pro-Trump, I don't know, man, right? Like in the past, I've never said that much negative about Trump. It's like I try to take things more objectively because I don't care. I'm an Indian. I'm not in US. I don't have any opinion. But this is like global economy, and this is how I see it, right? I'm a civil contractor. I also like deal in basically similar things. So I realize how when shit like this happens, like this, I don't see it, man. I feel like this is gonna get worse, right? Maybe Hail Mary attempt, maybe things will get better, but they won't get better for like a long time. Well, that was the one way Trump's tariff makes sense by channel TLDR News Global. If you like my content, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.